What's going on, folks, and welcome to the Deconstructing Topic podcast. My name is David, and I'm your legendary host of this legendary podcast, the Deconstructing Topic podcast, where we talk about a little bit of it all, and we try to, deconstruct the topic. And once again, we got an interesting topic. We had a couple of people who have reached out to me in the last week or so and kind of requested what I think, and I want to say is this. I gotta, how can I say it to you? I love my job. I love what I do. And I love doing content. And I do want to do so much content. I'm telling you, I will be doing a lot of content. But sadly, one of the things, and again, I love what I do. I love my job. But it does consume at least 10 hours of 5 days a week, sometimes even a couple of hours on Saturdays. It does consume 10 hours, including transportation. So once in a while, we get something that's out there in the press that I would love to cover. And then this one, apparently, for some reason, some people say, hey, I want to hear your thoughts on it. And that's why I'm here to talk about it. And once again, I just want to get you a heads up. I'm going to see things on my point of view and how I see things, and just want to share my opinion on a couple of things. And if you're new, or we are family, whatever the case, if you return listener, whatever it is that we are family, feel free to share, like, comment, do all that good stuff. Remember, the likes is important. The subbing, subscribe, let your family members know. Let everybody know. Sit in front of a fireplace, sit somewhere, have a couple of drinks, have a couple of 40s, have a couple of teas, coffee. There's people out there throughout the world that listen to my podcast. Either just enjoy, and we make it happen. We got a crazy, interesting situation that kind of developed like about 3 weeks ago, but for some reason, it's making it national news because everybody has an opinion on it. And because there's some video there that kind of triggers the emotion, and it's the stabbing of Ukrainian refugee Irina Taroska. Lately it seems that there's some new video evidence have emerged, and what happened basically. For those who don't know the news, in Charlotte, a few weeks back, there was a Ukrainian refugee who just happened to take what they call the rail train. It's what they call it over there in, New York City. So be in the subway, you know what I mean? But this individual, this, little blonde girl, whatever, skinny, just goes in the train, sits down on her cell phone. Behind her is a black gentleman in a hoodie, red hoodie. And with the minutes, I guess whatever happened, that he gets trigger on his own, pulls out a knife. And for the most part, people have seen the image of just him looking like he's about to launch. But there's videos out there of the actual incident, of the actual stabbing. And it's interesting because it looked at like she was in shock. And sadly, within those minutes of that happened, then my understanding is that she collapsed. You know what I mean? Because you go on this shock situation. I've been in an accident. I've been in a car accident. And, when you go to this shock and I'm bleeding, you already know it's like the body just sometimes shut down on people, and that's the end of it. But it's making news, and I just want to say is this, and once again, it's just my opinion, because there's certain things and certain topics, certain situations, because the individual is a refugee from Ukraine. I've seen certain outlets like really pushing. And again, you're describing the person. I get it. You hear people, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. So she escaped a war, from the Ukraine-Russia situation. She came to this country, and the next thing is like, boom, okay. Which I've heard that before, and interesting. I want people to kind of keep that in mind, the word refugee. You know what I mean? Because I'm in New York City. We got a bunch of refugees from, Sudan, Syria, to other places, Colombia, Venezuela. If you look at these countries are basically people that come to this country, refugees. But I like how sometimes the media's portraying it as, hey, listen, we got this Ukrainian because of Russia. She was here, and then this happened. Then you got the situation with the individual Brown, which is the suspect who happened to do the stabbing. And the understanding is that he had 14 priors and so on and so forth. But he was still out for, free. And then he had mental issues as well. It's a combination of a little bit of everything. And it's one of those things that it's going to go down as something that, once again, we shouldn't and should not have happened. Now, we just want to say this and keep this in mind. And look, I depend on the public transportation in New York City, and New York City public transportation, that's wild. Because we got hundreds of thousands of people that take the New York City bus and the subway system. And I get up early in the morning. I'm taking my train like at 4:40 in the morning. And there's people. That's a lot of people because a lot of them go to work early, especially those in the construction, blue collar, doing that little early shift kind of thing. You know what I mean? But one thing I noticed, and again, I just want to say this, and I always have said this. When you're taking public transportation or anything that you've seen, but I've seen it more than ever, especially in New York City, beware of your surroundings. I see people that sit down, and I get it. You're tired, it's early in the morning, or you go home, you're tired, you just doze off, or you just on a cell phone. But sadly, there's people out there that's just up to no good, and they might be carrying a little knife. And we have learned in life that it doesn't matter the size of the knife. If they stab you on on a certain part of your body that, it's going to hit that artery, oh, you're done. You know what I mean? It might look harmless, but hey, listen, but just always, I always said, keep mind of your surrounding. And even if you're tired, you just want to sit down because that's what people do, right? That's what the individual came in the train. That's what she did. She went on her phone. Now, we're surrounding if she did look at at Brandon, the suspect, just leaning towards the kind of like window, maybe looked like he was sleeping. Maybe he was sleeping. And in the video, the sad thing is that he gets triggered for some reason. Something happened. He's talking to himself for a little bit up there, a couple of minutes, whatever. Then he just pulls out the knife, pocket knife. Choop. Sad story. And again, it's one of those situations. It could have been avoided. Why, that person was out there. If he was having mental issues, now, if he didn't do anything crazy, say, hey, listen. And I tell people, because there's people like, oh, you should have been arrested. He should have been doing life. Let's find out what exactly he did in those, you got to look at it the context of what it is that you do, that the time that you got to be serving, let's say in Charlotte. Now, Charlotte's a big city. It's a small, big city, but it's a city nonetheless. Not New York City, not Chicago, LA, Houston, Dallas. You already know. Those are the big boys. But, Charlotte's up there. So there's that little hustle and bustling thing that's going on. So, hey, people are going to take that public. And then sadly, in many big cities, there's so much that a lot of people just get left behind. And then, if the conversation came about mental issues, hey, that's an interesting topic. Like, what's going on? This individual is going through the mental issue. And then, what's the solution to that? Now, I want to bring this up because I want to bring how certain parts of the media are playing the Ukrainian refugee thing where, she was here in this country because Russia, and all this. And I get it, you're saying for what it is. I want to keep this in mind, and I've said it so many times. I'm looking at a list of countries, refugees that got the tag of refugees. Colombia, Venezuela, Ukraine, obviously, Syria, Pakistan, Cuba, Afghanistan. Just to name a few, a lot of, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Syrian. You got Syria in the Middle East, Sudan, Africa, Congo, Africa, Somalia. So think about this. And I'm in New York City. And yes, there's a lot of people from these countries, because people are like, oh, Venezuela, what they doing here, and Colombian, and so on. And I always said is this. It's interesting how the media will play as, okay, this Ukrainian refugee because of Russia, then wait a minute. A lot of these countries that I just mentioned, the reason why they're here is because at one point, United States intervened in somewhere or something. And the next thing is like, you know what? You guys could come here now. So in other words, you understand what I'm saying? Now, if there's a lot of Venezuelan Colombian that come in New York City, they come to New York City, they get this tag that they get everything, whatever. But then they move to these parts, the black neighborhood, where already the black community or the black neighborhood are lacking certain things. And there's these individuals, it's not on them. They come to these parts in New York City. And now, sadly, they are consuming certain, how can I say it? like the budget of that area. So you're gonna have a high, the way I will see it, you're kind of gonna have a high situation where there's a lot of black individuals, from the black neighborhood, and it applies to Puerto Ricans as well, Hispanic. That mental issue is a thing. Maybe might not look like it. So what happens is this: that sadly, let's say, how many times we have seen I've at least encountered, I've stopped a few Colombian, Venezuelan refugees, right? About to like stab a black person and vice versa. And I'm like in the subway and I stopped a few. See how this works? So sometimes we like to use the word refugee, but sometimes we don't even use that word for the migrants that are coming here from Venezuela, Colombian. Now we're going to be like, oh, well, these migrants are coming over here. We need to cross the border and so on. And, obviously, when you in Europe and other parts, it's a little bit different how to get here. Remember, a lot of these individuals that come from these certain countries that I just said, even look, Venezuela, United States, it's like the 10,000th time United States intervenes in Venezuela. You know what I mean? Oh, but they're not refugees. They're just leaving the country, So I just want to mention that in regards to that situation. It is a sad situation what happened, because then the other aspect of that situation, and I always bring this up, is that, mental issue is a thing. And imagine this. And I always bring this up a lot of times. Mental issue is a thing that we lacking of, especially in our neighborhoods. But this is why violence is one thing. And I always explain to you, a lot of people in the situation that just happened in that with the Charlotte, Brown and that situation, the stabbing, that situation happens in the hood frequently. But it's not a sexy thing. It's not appealing. The people that are on the side of going against Brown are the people that would have been on the opposite side or not talking about it, but it happens in our neighborhood. And the people that are vocal about it are not saying anything about this situation. You understand how this works? There's no solution. Nobody's going to find a solution for mental health. No. For refugees, no. But, because it's Ukraine refugee, little, skinny blonde girl. Oh, Russia, and, she escaped the hands of Russia. But ain't nobody say, hey, listen, Venezuela, they escaped the hands of the United States, Colombia, right? Certain parts of Africa, hey, listen, United States always got a hand. If it's not United States, it's their so-called allies, the French, the Dutch, the English. Somewhere, someone in Europe has a hand on something, and they come over here. So I just want to touch bases on that. The whole mental health situation definitely needs to be addressed. And then the other day, on that same week when this was making national headline, because now Trump is saying something, Department of Justice saying something, and so on and so forth, I said to myself, look, if you want to go all out for that situation and address that situation, and because he had faults and priors, hey, listen, let's address certain things in our neighborhood. Because crime in our neighborhood, sometimes, for the most part, crime in our neighborhood don't happen because you have criminals. It just happens because of you commit a crime. And if you commit a crime, then, sadly, the crime is small, but you still live in the same neighborhood. But there's no rehabilitation. There's no one that really doing any rehabilitation. And I the other day I'm in Union Square Park, for those familiar in New York City. There was this little chubby Asian guy who just happened to be walking on the phone, not knowing where he was going to go. And then this black gentleman who looked, like he's going through a lot. He does check the checkbox a little bit, homeless, mental health issue, whatever it is. Because that's the other thing, too. People might say, oh, but no, come on, David. Now everything is a mental or homeless situation. It's been like that for quite a long time. If you ever go to New York City or these big cities, you get left off. Somebody, right? Remember, those drugs that creep into this country, or these drugs that are just somewhere, whatever it is, somebody's gonna take them. Somebody gotta take them, right? And sadly, it's people who are going through a lot, and because of the drug use, then you get that. Because of the mental issue, you get that situation. But it's one of those things where it could have been avoided. But I kind of think I always say, look, listen, we definitely, again, I'm going to go back. One of the reasons in our community, especially impoverished communities, black neighborhoods, Puerto Rican neighborhoods, Spanish, neighborhood. One of the things is the lack of to try to address the mental health issues, to try to address the homeless issue. All we do is let's keep everybody happy, consume. Here's money, here's this, that, is that. And a lot of people end up, taking drugs, taking whatever it is, and then the next thing they do something crazy. Hey, look, listen. Even the person, I always emphasize the person that did the first mass shooting in the United States, 60s, Texas. Yeah. Again, falls into the same category. Mental issue, drugs, whatever the case might be. And as long as we have that situation, then there's going to be victims like the Irene. Victim of the circumstances, victim of the perpetrator, victim of the system, victim of everything. And if we find out that, hey, this individual, 14, whatever priors, and there are things, or sadly, the prison system in the United States, there's a lot of people who are in prison, jail, whatever it is, So if it's one of those things, they get a tap in the hand, next time, hey, how can we address that? How can we address certain things? But at the end, I don't see solution. Everybody, I seen, we're going to give the death penalty. But what does that change? We're going to have this situation, and I'm going to go back to the hood, black neighborhood, where refugees are going to be kind of stabbing black people and vice versa. But nobody's going to talk about that because that's not the sexy thing to talk about. Sadly. And that's when you don't hear about refugees. Now it becomes gangs. You change the word refugees to gangs. Well, it's gangs because they live in the same area, right? Venezuela stick with Venezuela. Colombians stick with Venezuela, with Colombians. Sudanese stick with Sudanese, and that's how they become a gang. Doesn't mean that they're doing anything wrong. A lot of them, they do the Ubers, DoorDash. Was that a gang of DoorDashers? I don't know. But you see how you take the word, certain words. Now, you don't want people to gain sympathy for them because now you call them migrants or immigrants taking money from welfare, whatever the case might be. So anyways, that's my situation with that. That's my opinion. Well, the way I'm observing it, it's one of those things that should not be addressed. Being that he did that crime, absolutely. Don't. If you want to give him a rehab, then that's on you. But I wouldn't fully agree on that to be like, oh, he got mental issues, how can we fix it? Because, that's where the asylum comes in back then, you know what I mean? Asylums, they didn't do much more to rehab people. They just fed people to Big Pharma. Basically, that's what's going to happen here. He's going to be fed off to Big Pharma because Big Pharma's going to say, he stabbed someone and he has mental issue. We got a couple of new drugs there. Talk to me. That's what's going to end up happening. Anyways, this Deconstructing Topic podcast, you already know, make it happen. I'm out of here. Enjoy, like, share, comment, all that good stuff. Make it happen. I'm out. Peace.